Welcome to Infectious Disease Lesson 2.1, Infectious Disease Detectives, Typhoid Meiri. The goals of this lesson are to illustrate the complexity of identifying the source of an infectious disease, emphasize how patterns of transmission can be used to identify the causative agent, and introduce the concept of asymptomatic carriers. At the end of the lesson, the students should be able to explain why it is hard to identify a disease as infectious, and explain why it is hard to determine the source of an infectious disease. We will achieve our goals by discussing how we identify a disease as infectious and watching video clips about typhoid Meiri. To prepare for this lesson, you'll need to review the following key scientific concepts. Transmission patterns can be used to identify the source of an infectious disease. Microbes are too small to see without tools, so symptoms are often used to track infection. Infectious animals can be asymptomatic. You can review this scientific content in the background reading provided for you in the teacher primer, the teacher manual, and the student workbook. The teacher primer provides in-depth knowledge about the scientific content presented in this lesson. The teacher manual or lesson plan provides a minute-by-minute explanation of the lesson structure. And the student workbook provides additional explanation for students. Note that an annotated version is also available for teachers. Be sure to print the in-class worksheet, which can be found in the Lesson 2.1 curriculum materials. This lesson also requires watching 3 video clips about typhoid Meiri. The video clips are embedded in the PowerPoint slide deck, and you'll want to confirm that they play properly on your computer before using them in class. The key points of the lessons due now are that infectious diseases are characterized by how they are transmitted. It can be difficult to identify the source or cause of an infection. We'll get there with a group brainstorm. The do now begins by brainstorming how people know that a disease is infectious. Students will need to revisit the concepts they learned in Unit 1, especially the idea that infectious diseases are transmitted between people. The key points of the activity are to illustrate how transmission patterns can be used to identify the source of an infectious disease. And asymptomatic carriers make it hard to map transmission patterns. We'll get there by watching 3 video clips about typhoid Meiri. The first video clip sets the stage. After watching the clip, ask the students to discuss what could be the source of the bacteria. We know that typhoid comes from contaminated food or water, but how does the food or water get contaminated in the first place? Once everyone has recorded their thoughts, play the next video clip. This video clip introduces the pattern of disease transmission. After watching the clip, ask the students to discuss how they would prove that Meiri is a source of typhoid. Once everyone has recorded their thoughts, play the final video clip. This third video clip emphasizes some ethical dilemmas of forced quarantine. The key points of the wrap-up are that patterns of transmission can be used to identify the source of infection, and when symptoms are used to indicate infection, asymptomatic carriers complicate tracking patterns. We'll get there by having students reflect on the video clips and considering the question, why was it hard to identify Meiri as the source? The key point of the lesson's homework is to explore the ethical dilemmas of using quarantine to stop the spread of an infectious disease. We'll get there by having students write about one historical case of forced quarantine. One of the most common misconceptions students have is thinking that scientists have overcome all the challenges of identifying infectious diseases. Although our tools to identify infectious diseases have improved, it is still challenging and not possible to prove that a disease is not an infectious disease. At the end of the lesson, collect the lesson worksheets to assess students' reflections on the typhoid Meiri case. The processes and challenges of identifying infectious diseases will be further explored in Unit 2 with an emphasis on distinguishing correlation from causation. Don't forget, if you have any questions, concerns, or feedback, to let us know. You can contact any of the CTSE team members and we'll be happy to help you.